Hello, my name is Rochelle Gonzalez, and today I will be talking about vaccines and their importance. So I have a little table of contents here set up and of what I will be talking about. And first, I want to focus on an introduction to vaccines. So what is a vaccine? A little fun fact about it. Then I would like to focus on mentioning and discussing the vaccine types that there are. And lastly, I would want to focus on the benefits of vaccines and why you should get vaccinated. So I want to start it off with this little quote that is from Theresa Tam, who is currently the chief of public health in Canada. So she says, misinformation or distrust on vaccines can be like a contagion that spreads as fast as measles. And this is very important because obviously, as many people know, misinformation on vaccines is very common nowadays. And sadly, it has made things that were considered eradicated come back, which is not a good thing. So I would like to start off by introducing vaccines. So what is a vaccine? A vaccine is currently defined by the CDC as a preparation that is used to stimulate the body's immune responses against diseases, meaning that if you get vaccinated, your body will already know how to deal with a disease before it even catches it, which is a very big advantage that we now have. And this prevents us from dying from things that we could have died of back in the day because vaccines for it did not exist. So a little fun fact that I have here is the first vaccine was created in 1796 by Dr. Edward Jenner. And there are other very popular vaccines that we know of. I'm pretty sure one of the ones we learned about when we were younger was the polio vaccine created by Jonas Salk. And for some reason in my head, that's the only vaccine, the first vaccine, but now I am very much aware that it was not the first vaccine. This number here, I wanted to leave it here because there are about 262.9 million people in the United States that have at least gotten a vaccination in their lifetime. And this is very relevant because there are around 300 million to 400 million people in the US, which means that a great majority of these people are vaccinated. And that is very much a good thing because we can avoid the spread of diseases from it. So two, I would like to discuss vaccine types. So currently there are 6 different types of vaccines: inactivated vaccines, live attenuated vaccines, mRNA vaccines, subunit vaccines, toxoid vaccines, and viral vector vaccines. I want to start off with inactivated vaccines. So these are vaccines that, as the name says, they are inactivated, meaning they are composed of a dead version of the virus. And usually, since the virus is dead, these require multiple doses of the vaccine for it to be effective, since the first dose usually exposes your body to the virus and then the other doses build up that immunity to it. Examples of these vaccines, like the one in the picture, is the polio virus, the polio vaccine, and the hepatitis A and rabies vaccine. Secondly, I would like to talk about live attenuated vaccines. So these vaccines are the ones that I would consider the most common, and they're the ones that people are mostly familiar with when they go to the doctor, which includes chickenpox, measles, mumps, rubella, and of course, the flu shot. So these types of vaccines usually carry a weakened version of the virus. And the effect that it has on the body is that the body will fight it off. And usually you will become immune to it. But these vaccines have side effects that sadly are misinterpreted with you getting sick anyways, even if you have the vaccine, which is not true. These are just side effects from the vaccines, which include a headache, fever, and sometimes a bit of discomfort in the injection area, which is normal. I would also like to talk about mRNA vaccines. And this means that we're about halfway through with the vaccine types. So this one is as I said before, the mRNA vaccine, and it works by exposing individuals to a small piece of mRNA that is in the viral protein of the virus. The immune system will not recognize this, so it will usually become alert, and the person will become accustomed to fighting it. And if you were to become infected, your body will immediately attack the virus before the person gets very sick. The only current example of an FDA mRNA accepted vaccines are the Pfizer and the Moderna vaccines. So basically the COVID-19 vaccines. I would also like to talk about subunit vaccines. So these are vaccines that are composed of proteins that usually contain specific parts of the virus. Sadly, one disadvantage of these vaccines is that they're usually not strong enough, but they are safer. However, you have to take adjuvants, which are already included in the vaccine, in order to provide you with immunity. So basically what this means is when the virus is made, something will be added into it to allow it for it to actually be effective. So currently there are 4 types of subunit vaccines, and these are the protein subunit, which includes hepatitis B, the polysaccharide subunit, which includes pneumococcal polysaccharide, the conjugate vaccine, which includes the pneumococcal conjugate, and the peptide subunit, which includes malaria and hepatitis C vaccine. I would also like to talk about toxoid vaccines. So the toxoid vaccine, as the name says, are vaccines made from toxins or poisonous proteins. It is important to note that the virus will not poison you. The poison is inactivated. So it is a way for you to defend yourself against the toxins that a bacteria might give you, which is usually what affects you when this vaccine is being made. So as the name states, it's important to remember that these vaccines will not poison you. They are just toxins that are inactivated that are meant to just treat you against these harmful poisons that are given by these sort of viruses. So an example of these viruses and vaccines for them are tetanus and the diphtheria vaccines. Lastly, I would like to talk about viral vector vaccines. So the viral vector vaccines are vaccines that usually carry genes of a pathogen that code for a specific antigenic response, and that is first inserted into a viral vector. So it's not just you getting a weakened version of the virus or an mRNA part of the virus. It is a part of the virus that is first injected into a vector, which is then injected into you. So to make things clear, a vector is something that would carry the pathogen instead of the pathogen being directly placed into the vaccine. So basically, a delivery system is created for the pathogen to stimulate responses from our system and proteins. Usually their benefit from this is that they carry out responses that would not be done by something like a subunit vaccine. And it does not require an adjuvant like subunit vaccines, which is very beneficial. An example of a viral vector vaccine is the RVSV-ZBOV vaccine against Ebola. Lastly, I would like to talk about vaccine benefits. So why should you become vaccinated? There are many reasons as to why someone should become vaccinated, besides the fact that it's required in many workplaces and in schools for children. First, a vaccine usually provides immunity, and diseases are usually considered eradicated, gone, or eliminated. Before this, before the vaccines, diseases or viruses would cause a lot of unpreventable death or would leave many people unable to live their lives. And most of the time, diseases would come in forms of pandemics, which would result in a lot of people getting sick or people getting others sick. So, which means that a loved one can get it, or you might transmit it to someone who is usually not in the condition to get this virus, similarly to what happened with COVID. So vaccines are a safe way to prevent all of this from happening, as diseases would be prevented before they even get to you. Other consequences are the possibility of AMR and antimicrobial resistance. Meaning that this is a big problem because many diseases are mutating and evolving and becoming resistant because of antibiotic use. So instead, you would just use a vaccine, which is a safe way to become immune to a disease or a virus without having the disease or virus become resistant, because vaccines are about 100% effective, which means that the virus will not have a chance to mutate or to find a way to get around it. So to elaborate on this, if you are immune and other strains like the ones we see now in AMR, like Versa and MRSA, so vancomycin resistant Staphylococcus aureus or methicillin resistant Staphylococcus aureus are rising. There are currently vaccines that people are trying to come up with so to avoid these very, very deadly diseases from killing more people. But sadly, because there are so many strains already because of antibiotic use, there is almost not an effective way of making a vaccine that can basically mean that you do not get it without it becoming more resistant because of it. I would also like to mention that things like herd immunity do exist, but it is important to understand that just because herd immunity exists, that does not mean that it is okay not to be vaccinated. Because there is a percentage of people in the population that must be vaccinated for herd immunity to exist. And usually herd immunity is something that benefits those who have weak immune systems, like young children or the elderly, or people who have compromised immunity because of certain viruses and diseases. This is the end of my presentation, and I hope something new was learned about vaccines and how important they are. Thank you so much and have a great day, and I hope you consider vaccinating yourself. Goodbye.